Today we're about to blow your minds with the most insane July 4th story that nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever told you before. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Matos Domingos and welcome back to my YouTube channel, The Brazilian Around the World. And today, oh my goodness, today we're about to blow your minds with the most insane July 4th story that nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever told you before. You think you know July 4th? You think you know Independence Day? Wrong. Everything you've been taught is incomplete because there's this one city, Richmond, Virginia, that basically made July 4th possible, and historians have been keeping this secret for over 240 years. Here's the thing though, by the end of this video you're gonna be so mad that nobody ever told you this story, and you're gonna be calling your history teacher like, why didn't you tell me about Richmond? Trust me on this one, because today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to show you exactly why Richmond, Virginia is the real hero of July 4th, and nobody talks about it. Alright guys, let's travel back to March 23rd, 1775. That's right, more than a year before July 4th, 1776. While everyone thinks the Declaration of Independence just magically happened in Philadelphia, the real spark of independence was lit here in this tiny church right here in Richmond, Virginia. Picture this, it's 1775 and the British are getting really suspicious of these colonial meetings. So what do the Virginia revolutionaries do? They're like, yo, we can't meet in Williamsburg anymore. There are too many British spies. So they moved their secret meeting to this little church here in Richmond. And who was at this meeting? Oh, just some nobody named George Washington, just some random guy called Thomas Jefferson, and this dude, Patrick Henry, who was about to deliver the most legendary speech in American history. But here's what's crazy, and this is where it gets insane. Patrick Henry stands up here in this Richmond church behind me. He's looking at all these delegates who are still scared to fight the British. Some of them are like, maybe we can work this out peacefully. And Patrick Henry's like, nope, not today. And he delivers this speech that literally changed the course of human history. He goes,
"Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty, or give me death."
oh my goodness, can you imagine being inside of that little church? This man just said he'd rather die than live under British rule in Richmond more than a year before anyone even thought about July 4th. And you know what happened next? Those delegates went from scared little colonies to let's arm the militia. Just like that, Patrick Henry's Richmond speech literally convinced Virginia to prepare for war. Without Richmond, there would be no July 4th. But wait, it gets even more insane. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first piece of evidence for why Richmond, Virginia is the real hero of July 4th, and nobody talks about it. Well, we're just getting started. Anyways, let's fast forward to 1776. So now we're getting closer to July 4th, right? But here's what they don't teach in school. Virginia wasn't just part of the independence movement. Virginia was the independence movement. Check this out. Virginia was the richest colony. We're talking about the colony with the most money, the most land, the most everything. These Virginian guys had everything to lose by declaring independence. But you know what they said? We don't care. Freedom or nothing. And here's where Richmond comes back into the story in the most epic way possible. Remember Thomas Jefferson? Yeah, that guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Well, guess what he did in 1780? Right in the middle of the Revolutionary War. He moved Virginia's capital from Williamsburg to Richmond. And you're probably thinking, Matos, why does that matter? Oh, it matters. Here's the thing though. Williamsburg was full of British loyalists. It was like the British Fun Club headquarters. But Richmond was pure patriot territory. Jefferson was like, we're moving the capital to Richmond because Richmond bleeds red, white, and blue. But wait, it gets even more insane. So we're in Philadelphia, right? Continental Congress, July 1776, and they're debating whether to declare independence. Some colonies are like, maybe we should think about this more. Maybe we should make this more peaceful. And then Virginia's delegation stands up, led by Richard Henry Lee. And this guy was legendary. He looks at everyone and goes, we, Virginia, propose that these colonies declare independence from Britain right now. First, Virginia was first to propose independence, not Massachusetts, not Pennsylvania, Virginia. The state that had Richmond as its revolutionary headquarters. And you know what happened? One by one, the other colonies were like, if Virginia's in, we're in. But here's the most mind-blowing part that nobody talks about. The Virginia delegation to the Continental Congress included Thomas Jefferson, the guy who wrote the Declaration, George Wythe, Jefferson's mentor, Richard Henry Lee, the guy who proposed independence. These weren't just random delegates. These were the architects of July 4th. And where did they get their revolutionary spirit? Where did they plan their strategy? Where did they get the courage to risk everything? Richmond, the city where Patrick Henry lit the fire of independence, the city that became Virginia's revolutionary capital, the city that said we'd rather die than bow to Britain. Now do you see it, ladies and gentlemen? Now do you understand why Richmond, Virginia is the real hero of July 4th and nobody talks about it? Richmond wasn't just watching history happen. Richmond was making history happen. But ladies and gentlemen, the story gets dark because in 1781, the British decided they were done with Richmond's revolutionary nonsense and they sent the most hated man in America to destroy it. Benedict Arnold, yeah, that Benedict Arnold, the biggest traitor in American history. The British were like, you want to hurt the Americans? Go burn down their revolutionary headquarters, Richmond. January 1st, 1781, New Year's Day, Benedict Arnold sails up the James River with his fleet, burning everything, plantations, towns, everything. And his target, Richmond, the heart of Virginia's revolution. Picture this, Arnold arrives here in Richmond with his army, and the city has only 200 militiamen defending it, 200 guys against Arnold's entire force. And you know what those 200 Richmond defenders did? They fired one volley at Arnold's army, and then they ran. Just kidding. Well, actually, they did run, but here's why this is legendary legendary. Thomas Jefferson, the governor, sees his militiamen retreating, and instead of surrendering, he orders the entire city to evacuate. All the military supplies, all the government documents, everything. He's like, you want Richmond? You can have the buildings, but you're not getting our revolution. So Arnold marches into Richmond and finds nothing. No supplies, no government, no treasure, just empty buildings. And he's so frustrated that he sends Jefferson a message. Give me all your tobacco and military supplies or I'll burn your city. And Jefferson, this absolute legend, writes back, no, you betrayed America and you're not getting anything from Richmond. Oh my goodness, can you imagine? Jefferson basically told the most dangerous man in America to go kick rocks. So what does Arnold do? He burns Richmond to the ground. Homes, business, government buildings, everything. But here's what's incredible. Even with their city burning around them, the people of Richmond never gave up. They never surrendered. They never stopped believing in independence. They were like, burn our buildings, but you can't burn our spirit. But ladies and gentlemen, this story has the most epic revenge plot in American history, because Jefferson wasn't about to let Benedict Arnold burn Richmond and just walk away. Jefferson calls up Colonel Matthew Sampson, this absolute warrior. I need you to hunt down Arnold and make him pay for what he did to Richmond. And Matthew's like, say no more. Matthews gathers 200 men, the same number that originally defended Richmond, and they go hunting for Benedict Arnold. And they find him. For days, they chase Arnold all over Virginia using guerrilla warfare tactics that would make more than special forces proud. Arnold's army starts taking losses left and right. These Richmond patriots are hitting them from the woods, from behind rocks, from everywhere. Arnold's like, I just wanted to burn one city. Why are these people so angry? Because Richmond wasn't just a city. It was the soul of American independence. You don't mess with the soul and expect to walk away. Finally, Arnold had enough. He retreats all the way back to Portsmouth, burning more towns on his way out. But he's running. The man who burned Richmond is running from Richmond defenders. Once in Portsmouth, Arnold digs in, fortifying his position with British troops. His forces are now on the defensive, waiting for reinforcements, but the tide is turning. By May 1781, General Charles Cornwallis arrives in Virginia after his brutal campaign in the Carolinas. Arnold, now just a subordinate, is sidelined, then shipped north to raid New London, Connecticut. In September 1781, it's his last major action in the war and the final disgrace of a broken traitor. After the war, Arnold flees to England, hated by Americans and mistrusted by the British. He dies in 1801. His name forever cursed as the most infamous turncoat in U.S. history. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the end of the Richmond campaign. But here's the most incredible part. This whole Richmond story connects directly to the end of the Revolutionary War, because George Washington saw what happened to Richmond and he was furious. He sent his best generals, Anthony Wayne and the Marquis of Lafayette, to Virginia to finish what Richmond started. And where did it all end? Yorktown, Virginia. Just a few hours from here, from Richmond, the British surrender that ended the Revolutionary War happened in the same state where Patrick Henry gave his speech at St. John's Church, where Jefferson moved the capital, where Arnold burned the city, and where Richmond's defenders fought back. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 officially ended the war and recognized American independence, but that independence was born here in Richmond. It was defended here in Richmond, and it was won by the spirit that Richmond represented. So here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Every single July 4th, millions of Americans celebrate independence. They watch fireworks, they have barbecues, they wave flags. But how many of them know that the spark of that independence was lit in that little church right here in Richmond, Virginia? How many know that Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty" or "Give Me Death" speech in Richmond directly inspired the Declaration of Independence? How many know that Virginia, with Richmond as its revolutionary capital, was the first to propose independence? How many know that Thomas Jefferson moved Virginia's capital to Richmond, specifically to separate from British influence? How many know that Richmond's resistance to Benedict Arnold showed the world that Americans, patriots, would rather die than surrender? The answer is almost nobody, because for some reason history books loves to talk about Boston, Philadelphia, New York, but they skip right over here, Richmond. They skip over the city that was the heartbeat of American independence. But now you know that July 4th isn't just about Philadelphia, it's about Richmond. It's about Patrick Henry standing up in St. John's Church and saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." It's about Jefferson making Richmond the capital of revolutionary Virginia. It's about 200 militiamen defending their city against Benedict Arnold. It's about Colonel Matthews chasing that traitor all the way back to the coast. Richmond didn't just contribute to July 4th. Richmond made July 4th possible. Without Patrick Henry's speech, there was no revolutionary spirit. Without Virginia's leadership, there's no Declaration of Independence. Without Richmond's resistance, there's no proof that Americans would fight for freedom. So this July 4th, when you're watching those fireworks, remember Richmond. Remember the city that lit the fire of independence. Remember the people who said, "We'd rather die than live without freedom." Remember the untold story that changed the world. That is the complete, unfiltered, mind-blowing truth about why Richmond, Virginia is the real hero of July 4th, and nobody talks about it. But now you're talking about it. Now you know the secret that transformed America forever. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Richmond, Virginia secretly became the most important city in July 4th history. Funny how the biggest moments can hide in plain sight, isn't it? I'm Matos Domingos. If you enjoyed this great video, I'd truly appreciate it if you gave it a like. It really helps others and find these stories. Subscribe for more untold stories from around the world. And let me know in the comments, had you heard about Richmond's role before? Or what's your favorite piece of forgotten history? Either way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, the best stories are the ones they never taught you in school. Take care, everyone. See you in the next adventure.